There's a very specific kind of tragedy that only makes sense in a story like this one. A boy loses the girl he loves inside a video game. She actually dies in real life because of it, and 6 years later the game gets rebooted, and she's just there again with no idea any time has passed at all. That's the setup we're working with today. This is the story of Haruto, a guy who quit gaming completely after watching his team fall apart, and what happens when the world that broke him drags him right back in. Let's get into it. Act 1. The fall of the best team in the game. Haruto looks like an ordinary Japanese high schooler, but he's carrying something heavier than most people his age ever have to deal with. Years earlier, when a massive online game called Union launched with limited access, Haruto, still just a grade schooler at the time, turned out to have real talent for it. Playing regularly, he fell in with a group of other kids his age, and the 6 of them clicked instantly. As they played together more, their teamwork got sharper and sharper until they weren't just a good team, they were arguably the best team in the entire game. Haruto became their leader, and with good reason. Backing him up was Asahi, a girl with a genuinely broken ability. She could see a few seconds into the future. Paired with Haruto's frontline fighting that gave the team a level of precision nobody else could touch. She'd call out enemy movements before they happened, and he'd already be there to counter them. Rounding out the group was Satsuki, who had feelings for Haruto and was pretty convinced, in that quiet way people notice these things, that he had feelings for Asahi instead. Confidence was never something this team lacked, and eventually that confidence tipped into arrogance. When they heard about a dungeon nobody had ever managed to clear, one people straight up said was unsurvivable, Haruto didn't hesitate. He hyped the team up, brushed off the hesitation from a couple of members, and got everyone on board for a raid. At first, it looked like they'd proved the doubters wrong. The monsters on the way in were manageable, the traps got disarmed thanks to Asahi's foresight, and they strolled straight into the boss chamber like it was nothing. Then the actual boss showed up, a massive armored monster that immediately made it clear why nobody had beaten this thing. Asahi kept calling out attack patterns, Haruto kept dodging by a hair, and the team worked the monster down using every trick they had, turning its weapon to sand, its armor to lead, sending a summoned bird to hit it from above. It should have been enough. But the monster regenerated a new sword out of thin air, and when Haruto pushed forward too aggressively, against direct warnings not to, it retaliated by flinging a volley of blades at Satsuki's teammate Nozomi. Haruto scrambled to intercept, blocked almost everything, but one blade caught him from behind and dropped him wide open for a devastating energy blast. That's when Asahi jumped in front of him. She took the hit meant for Haruto and died on the spot, and in this game, death is permanent. No respawns, no second chances, you're just locked out forever. The team logged off in stunned silence and immediately tried reaching her outside the game, only to find out the horrifying truth. The shock of dying in-game had triggered a real heart attack, and Asahi had died in real life too. The team that had once felt unbreakable shattered instantly. Everyone quietly blamed Haruto for pushing the raid, for rushing the boss against advice, for getting them into a fight none of them were ready for. Haruto disappeared into himself after that, and the group never spoke again. Act 2, a reboot nobody asked for, cut to 6 years later. Haruto's in high school now, summer break just started, and his phone won't stop buzzing with a classmate begging him to fill out a 3-person party for some game. He shuts it down immediately. The last thing he wants is anything to do with gaming ever again. Then he comes downstairs for breakfast and catches the news. Union is getting relaunched under a new name, Reunion. It's technically free to play, but access is gated behind some kind of natural aptitude check, so not just anyone can get in. His classmates won't let up, and eventually, worn down, Haruto caves and logs in. The world feels familiar but different, updated but recognizably the same place he used to know inside and out. Wandering around, he runs into 2 classmates from his real life. A guy and girl who are clearly brand new to the game and hyped to explore a low-tier dungeon nobody else wants to bother with. Haruto, mostly out of boredom, tags along. His new companions are useless in the best way. They scream and cower the second any monster shows up, forcing Haruto to clean up every fight solo, which he does without much effort. Eventually, they hit a strange room with nothing in it but a large chest. The 2 newbies immediately volunteer Haruto to open it while they hang back at a safe distance. He does. A blinding light fills the room, and when his eyes adjust, he's staring at a fully grown Asahi lying inside, very much alive, very much awake, and acting like absolutely nothing happened. Haruto is floored. His first thought is that this has to be some kind of imposter. He pulls her out of the dungeon to talk privately, and she's happy, casual, completely unaware that anything's off, until she notices how much he's changed and asks what happened. happened. He dodges the question and starts grilling her instead, asking what year she thinks it is. Her answer lines up exactly with the year she died, 6 years ago. She assumes he's messing with her right up until he flatly tells her she died, at which point she gets genuinely upset and changes the subject. It's only when he has her check whether she can log out of the game, and she can't, while he demonstrates that he still can, easily, that the reality starts to actually sink in. She asks about the rest of their old team, and Haruto has to admit he hasn't spoken to any of them in 6 years and has no idea if they even still play. Before either of them can process any of it further, a group of men surrounds them, and a heavily built stranger steps forward, saying he'd heard rumors Asahi had died 6 years ago but assumed it was just talk. Haruto doesn't recognize him at all, but the guy clearly remembers Haruto, and Asahi recognizes him too, warning Haruto that this is the same muscle-headed player who used to try sabotaging their old team just to poach her for himself. The stranger, Leon, doesn't take Act 3. Taka comes back into the picture right as Leon closes in for a follow-up attack. Asahi shouts a warning from behind. It's a feint. The real strike is a kick to the head, and Haruto dodges by a hair while she lays down cover fire to force Leon back. Leon regroups, threatening to run them both out of the game entirely, and starts advancing again, until a familiar voice stops him cold. It's Taka, Haruto's old second-in-command, who never actually stopped playing and has become a heavy hitter in one of the game's strongest factions, the Illuminati. He summons a small army of clones and warns Leon off, and when Leon charges anyway, Taka doesn't even bother dodging properly. He grabs him and shreds his gear to nothing with a single move, sending Leon fleeing in humiliation. Taka turns to Haruto, asks if he's lost his mind coming back, gets a non-committal maybe in response, and then looks at Asahi with a smile, telling her he missed her. The reunion is warm right up until Taka invites her to rejoin his guild, and pointedly leaves Haruto out of the offer entirely, telling her flatly he'll never work with him again. He spends a few more lines tearing into Haruto's character before Asahi cuts him off, telling him she's not interested in going anywhere with him while he's acting like this. Taka backs off, but leaves the door open for her specifically, and disappears. That night, Haruto logs off and is still turning everything over in his head when his sister calls him downstairs, to find Satsuki at the door, visibly grown up since he last saw her. She's there to patch things up and reveals she started playing Reunion too. When he tells her he ran into Asahi, she assumes it's a cruel joke until his tone convinces her otherwise, and she insists on seeing for herself. They log back in together, and the second Satsuki spots Asahi standing next to him, any doubt evaporates. What follows is a genuinely painful conversation. Asahi starts asking why the group fell apart and where everyone went, and Satsuki, unable to hold it together, blurts out that it was her death that caused the whole team to collapse, and that she still visits her grave every year, terrified that this reunion is just some glitch that could disappear at any moment and rip everything open all over again. Act 4. Old bonds. New threats. The reunion doesn't get much breathing room. Haruto senses trouble and deflects an incoming arrow just before another group surrounds them, demanding they hand Asahi over. This time, Satsuki steps up and reveals she's picked up an ability that lets her wield every elemental type at once, something even elite mages typically can't do with more than 2 or 3. She single-handedly clears the ambush, and the 3 of them retreat to their old hideout, untouched after all these years. While the girls dig through old belongings, Haruto wanders off alone and encounters a strange, ethereal woman named Alicia, who tells him she can read minds, but insists she's not a threat. Her warning is blunt. There are people hunting Asahi, and they're waiting for the perfect moment to strike. She vanishes just as abruptly as she appeared, leaving Haruto rattled and confused, trying to clear his head. He overhears Satsuki and Asahi in a heated conversation, and not proud of it, eavesdrops. Satsuki is asking Asahi to keep her distance from Haruto, explaining that his death 6 years ago hollowed him out more than anyone else in the group, and that she's terrified of him getting hurt like that again. Haruto steps in before it can go further, tells them both flatly to stop worrying about him, and logs off. The next day, Satsuki comes by to apologize, explaining she only acted out of fear for both of them. She pulls out an old ring, a matching set the whole team bought together back when they were kids as a symbol of their bond, and it triggers a flood of memories. Determined to figure out what's really going on, Haruto does something genuinely unhinged. He and Satsuki head to the cemetery and dig up Asahi's grave, retrieving the matching ring buried with her, tied to a promise the two of them made to always protect each other. From there, Haruto commits fully. He's going to win this game, protect Asahi, and figure out why she's here at all. all. The next quest sends the three of them into a forest hunting a rare sap, fighting through low-tier tree monsters with an item drop rate so bad that Asahi decides to use herself as bait to lure out the strongest tree. It works. A massive tree monster grabs her, Haruto rushes in and severs its arm, and Asahi finishes it off with a precise shot, finally getting the sap she needs. Back in town, she has it forged into a ring, identical to the one they wore as kids, and plans to make three, one for each of them, just like old times. She offers the first one to Haruto, but he insists she keep it, and instead slides it onto her finger himself. Satsuki, watching the whole thing, is visibly stung and quietly disappears to gather her own sap and forge her own ring, hoping Haruto will do this. Act 5. Back into the dungeon that broke them, determined to unlock whatever's going on with Asahi's memory, Haruto leads both girls back into the exact dungeon where she died. It's a reckless plan by any measure. Their old 6-person team barely survived that fight at full strength, and now they're going in with half the numbers. But they push forward anyway, retracing every step from that day. When they reach the boss room, nothing happens at first. Then Alicia reappears just long enough to drop another cryptic warning before fading out, and the monster emerges again, exactly as it did 6 years ago. The flashbacks hit hard enough that they consider retreating, but the boss seals the exit before they get the chance. What follows is a brutal fight. Satsuki unleashes a massive combined elemental blast that does nothing against the boss's magic barrier and gets caught by an incoming blade that stuns her legs completely. Haruto rushes to shield her and gets pinned under falling debris for his trouble. As the boss closes in to finish them off, Asahi, refusing to just watch this happen twice, steps in front of it again, drawing its attention with gunfire and forcing the ceiling to collapse on it, buying them precious seconds even as she takes a hit that stuns her too. Just as Haruto's ready to accept defeat, he spots something glinting on the ground, a ring. The moment he puts it on, everything changes. He summons a spirit lion to tear into the boss and finishes it off with a devastating series of aerial slashes. Outside the dungeon, riding high on the wind, Asahi suddenly collapses and all three of them are hit with fragmented visions of her past. Scenes of her surrounded by people in lab coats, in a place none of them recognize. When she comes to, she has no memory of any of it. Act 6. Old enemies, new alliances back at the inn. Whispers follow them everywhere. Is this really the legendary team, or imposters riding their reputation? Haruto ignores it. Asahi is still hoping to track down their missing teammates, Clive and Nozomi, and Satsuki offers to use her contacts to help locate them. The search leads them straight into trouble. Fleeing crowds warn them that the Southern Cross Guild, an old rival that once tried and failed to recruit Asahi by force, is active nearby. Despite Haruto's instinct to back off, they press forward and walk straight into an ambush. The Southern Cross had been using the informants as bait the whole time. Surrounded and outnumbered, they're saved by an unexpected third party, a rival faction called the Brill Society, whose leader intervenes and forces the Southern Cross to stand down. He explains his motive isn't personal history, but self-interest. Asahi's very existence is destabilizing the game's balance, and he wants her protected under his guild before that instability causes real damage. Asahi firmly declines, insisting she already has people looking out for her, and the Brill leader, while clearly disappointed, lets them go rather than risk further chaos. There's a quieter stretch here too. Haruto invites Satsuki out on what's essentially a date to shop for computer parts, and she's thrilled, right up until he spends the entire outing talking about Asahi, completely oblivious to how that lands, and she leaves visibly deflated. The next day, the group regroups to figure out the meaning behind Asahi's fragmented visions. She recalls that her precognitive ability first manifested at the Tower of Heaven, so they head there, clearing out monsters that used to terrify them, but are now trivial. The boss, a hulking mechanical construct that once seemed unbeatable, goes down in stages. Asahi disables its arms, Satsuki burns through its second phase, and when Satsuki gets caught and dragged into a smokescreen, Asahi clears the air with a flare shot so Haruto can finish it with a flurry of slashes. At the top of the tower, right as Asahi prepares to teleport them out, she notices a strange red gem in her inventory, and before anyone can examine it, Taka teleports in with his guild and snatches it away. When Asahi demands it back, he brushes her off and turns his aggression on Haruto instead, accusing him, bizarrely, of trying to kill her, before sealing them both into an isolated dueling space. As they fight, Taka reveals just how far gone he is. He tells Haruto that Asahi is real to him now, that he loves her and that the real world stopped mattering to him the day she died. If staying in this game forever is what it takes to be near her, he's fully prepared to never log out again. Haruto tries to reason with him, pointing out that Asahi's own feelings should matter here too, but it only escalates things further. The fight only ends when Satsuki shatters the barrier from outside and Asahi herself draws a weapon on Taka, ordering him away from Haruto. Act 7. Betrayal and the battle for Asahi. The search for Clive and Nozomi continues across several regions with no luck. Neither of them shows up in any registry. On the road, the group gets separated inside a mist-shrouded forest that turns out to be cloaking over 100 enemies from Satsuki's senses. Haruto finds himself surrounded by a combined force from both the Brill Society and the Southern Cross, and learns the two guilds, along with Taka's Illuminati, have quietly formed an alliance specifically to take Asahi by force. The fight turns brutal fast, until Alicia reappears with a bow whose arrows nullify magic outright, turning the tide by disabling entire waves of enemies at once. Meanwhile, in a separate part of the forest, Taka has isolated Asahi and tries one final time to convince her to abandon Haruto and rebuild the old team under his banner. When she refuses again, he knocks her unconscious and moves to take her by force, only for what looks like his own guild members to intervene, grab her, and vanish. It's a trap. They're imposters, and Taka gets overwhelmed and subdued in the chaos as they make off with her. Back at the inn, the truth comes out publicly. The Brill Society and Southern Cross have merged into a single massive faction calling itself the Divine Guild, betraying the Illuminati in the process and successfully capturing Asahi for themselves. Haruto doesn't hesitate. He checks his gear and tells Satsuki he's going after her, alone. If that's what it takes, Satsuki, sharper than he's giving her credit for, points out the obvious. The Divine Guild now commands a combined force of over 3,000 members, and going in solo is suicide. She urges him to team up with Taka instead. Haruto refuses, telling her plainly that if he dies trying to save Asahi, she should be the one to team up with Taka, since without Haruto in the picture, Taka would have every reason to actually help her. He walks alone toward a battlefield stacked against him by every possible measure, takes one last look at the sky, and charges the entire enemy force by himself. Satsuki, refusing to just wait, goes to confront Taka directly, demanding to know what he's actually doing to help. He explains he's been calculating, waiting for the right opening against an enemy that outnumbers even his own guild 2-1. He can't afford to be reckless with Asahi's life on the line. Satsuki isn't having it. She tears into him, pointing out that Haruto was always the one who kept Asahi safe, and the one time he wasn't there, Taka failed completely and let her get taken by people he trusted. She tells him flatly that Haruto has already gone to the battlefield alone, and reminds him exactly what he stands to lose if Haruto dies without ever reaching her again. Act 8, the final battle out on the field, Haruto is a one-man wrecking crew, tearing through enemy lines until a coordinated magical strike from the fortress catches him in a massive explosion that leaves a crater and convinces everyone watching that he's finally dead. Then the dust clears, and he's still standing, pushing forward alone once again. He's eventually caught and suspended by magical chains, completely immobilized, right as the enemy commander orders the finishing blow. That's when a volley of lightning arrows shreds the chains apart. Taka lands in front of him, Satsuki right behind, and the three of them stand together in the middle of the enemy army for the first time in years. Taka makes his priorities clear immediately. He's here to save Asahi, not to fight Haruto, and Haruto nods in understanding. Working together, the two of them tear through the remaining 1,500 enemy troops, blow the fortress gates open, and storm into a massive hall leading to a stadium, where they find Asahi unconscious in the arms of Angelus, one of the two guild leaders behind the whole operation. Taka loses it on sight, throwing a punch so fast nobody can dodge it, except everyone does, because Angelus is somehow reading Asahi's captured precognition directly from her unconscious mind, seeing every attack before it lands. He keeps Taka pinned down with impossible precision while the other leader, Litos, moves in to finish him off, only for Haruto to intercept and force a standstill. Satsuki tries desperately to wake Asahi up, but Angelus shuts that down too, until Satsuki, done with being the one who needs rescuing, unlocks an entirely new level of power, calling on elemental forces to wipe out Angelus's entire magical presence in one devastating strike. The moment his connection to Asahi's mind breaks, Taka is freed. Litos, panicking, panicking, asks Angelus for the backup plan and gets stabbed with a ball of corrupting dark energy for his trouble, sending him into a berserk rage that throws both Haruto and Taka backward with a single shockwave. That's the moment Asahi finally wakes up, severing Angelus's connection to her mind for good. With their old rings suddenly glowing and their dormant abilities surging back online, all three of them, Haruto, Taka, and Satsuki, commit to one final combined strike. Satsuki bending space, Taka bending time, and Haruto cutting straight through both to land a devastating flurry of strikes that ends the berserk Lidos instantly. Satsuki rushes to Asahi's side while Haruto and Taka finish the job. Taka dropping Angelus with a single clean hit, Satsuki finishing him with fire magic. Act 9. An unfinished mystery. With the fight over, Asahi asks Taka for the red gem he took from her earlier, wanting to try using it to unlock more of those fragmented visions, the only memories she has of whatever happened to her before all this. He's reluctant, but gives it to her after she promises not to push herself into unconsciousness again. What she sees this time is clearer. Shadowy figures in white coats, discussing her abilities like she's a subject to be studied and used. Nobody, including Asahi herself, has any idea what it means yet, only that there's clearly a much bigger story behind why she exists in this game at all. She makes one more attempt to bring Taka back into the fold, and he refuses again, not out of spite this time, but because he genuinely doesn't feel like he deserves a place beside her yet and wants to work on himself before showing his face again. His parting words to Haruto aren't a threat exactly, but they're not friendly either. Don't die before he gets the chance to settle things between them properly. And that's where this chapter of the story leaves off. A team pulled back together by grief, a mystery about who Asahi really is and why she came back at all, and at least one score that still isn't settled. Whatever answers are coming, they're clearly saving them for next time.